All right. Up next on the 80/20 of growth, I'm here with Aaron Orendorff. Aaron is busy saving the world from bad content as a freelance copywriter at CMIContent. Aaron is a regular contributor at Entrepreneur, FastCompany, Business Insider, Content Marketing Institute, Unbounce, and many other major publications. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you know I love you, Jason. I am glad to be here, to hang out with you and talk, especially about my favorite topic.
So tell us, Aaron, how did you first begin into the world of internet marketing?
Yeah, this was one of those necessity is the mother of invention kind of stories. My life just imploded about 4 years ago now, and so I found myself in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, unemployed and unemployable, essentially, although I rectified that quickly. Having no idea what I was going to do. And so I'd written a little bit. I was an English major in college, and I'd followed a lot of sort of persuasion-ish techniques when I was in graduate school, although it really wasn't marketing per se. And I knew I could write good. And so when I had nothing else, my back was up against the wall, I launched a blog and was off and running. And that was probably about 3 years ago that finally all the working pieces came together. I did it because I had to do it, and I had no other choice than to make something happen.
Awesome. So then as you began to develop more and more of your skills, what helped you to get published on many of these major publications? What were some of those initial building blocks that helped you to get there?
I would probably say ignorance was one of the really big ones. I didn't I didn't enroll in any sort of like guest posting courses or things like that, where they kind of walk you through like hey, you've got to spend your time in the trenches, start out with 30 to 40 to 50 domain authority sites, build it up, make sure you've got a good content base on your own site. I just had ignorance to all that, which was actually probably one of the best things. And so I simply started by really going after some of the bigger publishers that you just mentioned. And we can talk a little bit more about the nuances of what I did, some on accident and some I realized, oh, this works really well, so I should keep doing that. But man, probably the best thing you can do is be aware of your ignorance and not let that stop you. Because that kind of like, oh, I'm not good enough is going to hold so many people back from thinking they've got to wait to do X, Y, and Z instead of just tackling that beast.
So tell us then, Aaron, what was the first big publication that you were able to get on that kind of helped you to have that confidence to be able to get on and write for some of these other sites?
I can't remember which one came first. I had two relationships that developed somewhat organically. Ann Handley, of all flippin' people, one day sends me an email. And this was back when I just had my blog going with like 6 posts on it or something ridiculously shameful. Hey, I really loved what you wrote on this little post. I'd like to include it in my book. And it was like, this is insane. That lady must just do so much research out there that she somehow stumbled across. So that opened the door ended up writing for Marketing Profs, which didn't really like explode or anything like that, but it was a good sort of stamp. And then I became legitimately good friends with Damian Farnworth from Copyblogger. And that came about because I loved what he was writing on Copyblogger, found out he had his own site called the Copybot, and then found out he had his own site, like uber personal, on things like theology and the same books that I went to graduate school at seminary, and just like the same niche authors that I was into there, he was writing about on like 3, whatever stages of removal from Copyblogger itself. And so I just started like commenting and tweeting and liking and as much as I possibly could until I sort of got his attention and built like a genuine human relationship. And what was funny was, so I pitched Copyblogger, again, not knowing like how many they get, 2 ways. I sent an official post through their submission process, which today doesn't even exist. Like they don't even have a page where you can submit anything to them. And I got the immediate thanks but no thanks. We're not accepting any unsolicited posts right now. And then I just walked it by my friend Damien, and he accidentally sent me the entire email sequence between him and his editor at the time. It was like line, little response, all the way down to like the thing, like the centerpiece of it, and then back out. And the centerpiece of it was, is he a decent dude that deserves a chance?
Oh,
And Damien said, yes. and then back at it goes, and I get the whole email, and and that was like that was honestly like the really big one. That was like, oh, this dude's written for Copyblogger, legit in this marketing space.
Totally. And it's interesting as you talk about, and building that kind of first genuine relationship. I found very much the same with my own personal story in connecting with Sujin Patel. And as I began just naturally building a relationship with him, it's those pet projects that I found tend to be the easiest way to really connect with them. For Sujin, he was starting to build out Content Marketer, and I was starting to do different stuff in influencer marketing. I didn't even know at the time it was called influencer marketing. Talk again about ignorance.
Yeah, wonderful.
And that's what helped to really start to get that traction in that relationship. And I mean, not like in a marketing sense, I wasn't even thinking about that at that time. And that soon led to more opportunities as he and I connected.
Now, I don't know, and in fact, I'm fairly sure that's not like a scalable model. Which means, if you try to scale it, like I'll see blog posts out there about influencer marketing where they try to build a scalable approach. And it's like these really slick templates and, like 3 tweets, follow them, retweet 3 of their things, and then send this message. People can see right through that, right? So in the beginning, it's just so important you really have to like narrow down who are you into? Who do you like at a gut level connect with? And then try your hand at just being a nice person to them and appreciating their work. And the problem with a lot of these approaches is that it tries to do that at a mass scale. And
right.
It's just, one, it's too time consuming. There's easier ways to do that now that I've discovered to actually connect with people. And 2, if you try to do that and you're not actually being genuine, it's nonsense.
Totally. So, going a little back to, you've gotten onto these major publications. And as you've had that different experience, somebody who's listened to this, how should an entrepreneur prioritize what she should learn first and getting published then on these major sites?
Yeah. If you're targeting a specific site, number one, get a feel for their publishing. I don't know if schedule is the right word, standard operating procedures. Like I wasted a lot of time trying to get into places like Forbes and Inc. early on because I didn't realize and I just didn't look deep enough to find out they only work with ongoing weekly people. And so firing one-off publications in these places yielded 0 results because that's just not how they operate. And of course it's there in their guidelines. Like that's the kind of, and you need an intro, and now I'm on Inc. and I publish weekly. But I fired off a lot that just went nowhere because I didn't invest in figuring out what it is they want. And the second thing is right along with that, not only their publishing schedule and their editorial sort of guidelines, but doing research on the site itself that you want to publish on, not just for their editorial guidelines, but for what's popular there. That's probably the best thing you can prioritize. Even doing something as simple as BuzzSumo searches for, if you want to write for Entrepreneur, what are the top 20 articles of the last year? What are some common themes? What can you write about? Or what did Forbes do really, really well? And then you can bring that over to Entrepreneur where there's a hole in the space. That's a fantastic way for idea generation that isn't asking really you to exert any creative brain power and is far more guaranteed to connect than something you do create yourself and you think is wonderful. And so prioritize understanding when and how they publish, prioritize what they publish as far as topic goes, and then just pay attention to things like length, really matters, linking, cross-linking, right? Don't link to Business Insider if you're trying to get something published in FastCompany. And always write the full article. I have never had one single piece of success pitching editors. Every time that a new door is opened up, it's because I write an entire article based on those things I just talked about, and I say, here is a gift for you. This is ready to publish. I'm going to make your life as an editor easier, not harder. It's all set and ready for you, and that opens doors so much faster than any nonsense of pitching, especially pitching multiple topics or anything like that over time.
That's interesting because a lot of the experience that I've had working with different influential bloggers, and again, this is a totally different topic. I found a bit more success in pitching, usually what I'll do is pitch like 3 different ideas, give them the outline so that they see I have a good framework for it.
Nice.
But you're saying that's different than for these bigger publications.
Yeah. Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Business Insider, Huffington Post. I'm trying to think of those are places where the first time I got in was here's the entire piece, super short email, the piece is just attached, and we're off and running. Yeah, and even that's true with Content Marketing Institute, Unbounce, even some of those smaller ones. That's what I've done every single time. That's the flow that I know that's worked the best. And when I've done other approaches, and I know I hate it when people do it to me, right? I like kills me when someone sends me an email that's basically here's another thing for you to put on your to-do list. Like here's another piece of work for you, Aaron. If someone hands me something that is ready to go, it is on, and I love that person forever because they made my life easier.
That's great. So then, what are some of the biggest wastes of time you've seen when trying to get published on these different sites? So, thinking back from all your experience, what are some of the things that you wish you had learned when you were first starting out?
That approach to relational connections has not worked for me with major publications. It worked with Copyblogger because that was like a legitimate relationship that built. It worked with Marketing Props because Anne was super awesome enough to reach out to me to begin with. But I've wasted a lot of time doing things like finding out who the editors are at Forbes and following all of them on Twitter and liking a few of their things and following up on LinkedIn and all this kind of stuff where you're supposed to like kind of get on someone's radar. I've wasted a lot of time doing that when in the end all it was like, okay, the 5 people that have editor in their title at these places with a really simple email, finish the piece, perfect fit for this, here's the article, let me know. And so that's why I said like that whole scalable thing of like relational marketing. And it might be different for if you're trying to just get the attention of an influencer, but to get published, boy, I wasted a lot of time thinking because the advice I heard online that just didn't yield anything when a direct, short, here's the thing, let me know if you're interested, has yielded such better results.
Yeah, and I found as I've done a lot of different stuff with influencer marketing, it's definitely been different. Some of the time you need to have those inside connections for somebody to introduce you to somebody else, especially when you're trying to connect with, like, say, those celebrity influencers who are well known by everybody in the industry. But then other times, I found it a lot easier, like you said, just to cold email them, be very brief, to the point,
yes,
and have it all done and ready for them.
Yes. I mean, even if you're asking somebody for like a contribution to something, like you're not going to write for them, but you want them to give you something back. But there's so many of these like dumb emails I get where, number one, it doesn't match my niche, my experience, anything like that. It's super vague. I end up reading the email and I'm like, what are you asking for? Right? And then it's just done. It's like, it's off. Whereas it's, here's the one question. These are how many words I need. This is the due date. And I'm like, dude, thank you. Yes, that is insanely blunt. I will help you out.
So now, as you've written for a lot of these big sites, you've also even had some of your articles be the #1 source of traffic, which is, I mean, it's huge for, for Copyblogger, for Unbounce, Client Boost, Shopify Plus. Tell us a little bit, what is your process of being able to get so much traffic for those different articles that you were able to help create?
This is probably like my one insightful 80-20 principle right here. Because what I've developed is I've recognized my skill set is long form beast articles that I cannot like produce a lot over, like I can't like crank one of these out every 2 weeks, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna write a bunch of stuff that just things have to go up, there's deadlines, whatever. But the 80-20 is there's gonna be these certain posts that establish you. And so like I did this, you mentioned my first big one, after I'd written a couple times for Copyblogger, we did this epic post where I took like, I had this checklist, optimization checklist that I used with clients that was like 89 questions long. We boiled it down to 51, turned it into a PDF, and that thing just exploded. I think it's like the average share count on Copyblogger is something like, 2 to 3 to 4,000 for most articles. In fact, our top article, I think the last 12 months is right around 4,000 or 5,000, period. And this one has like doubled, quadrupled that. I mean, it's just been fantastic the way this one piece has exploded. And it was because all this effort went into that. and I made it great. Same thing happened with this year with Unbounce. Yeah, you mentioned I wrote their biggest article like by a mile. They ended up writing another article about that article, which was like very meta on all the things that it accomplished. We did an entire podcast on it. We're doing another push right now, all built around this one. So if you get so much more out of that. I'm going to sink 80% of my energy into these, 20% of these posts. These are my babies. I'm going to have to do other stuff as well, but this is where my love goes. And the payoffs for that are huge. Like Client Boost did the same thing with their biggest article of the year. I just found out from Shopify Plus that this article I wrote last month demolished their previous page count by a factor of about 3,000 or 4,000 compared to what they normally get, what the top has ever been for a month in the past. And I guess I'll say two things. So how do you do something like that? Number one, you start with what's already popular. So like I knew the Copyblogger thing would work because it was something I used with clients. And then number two, man, you cannot underestimate the power of a good story. This thing I did for Shopify Plus was like not really all that e-commerce technical at all. It was just this insanely good story about Jones Soda of all people, who haven't had a profitable quarter in like a decade, and the turnaround that took place over the last 6 years and they finally hit. It was just like, I was assigned this, hey Aaron, write a case study about one of our clients, and we just walked into it and it was beautiful. So I don't know how much credit I could take for that. I'd love to take more credit for it. Ooh, having a good story, it's so magnetic.
That's awesome. So let's actually dig into that a bit more, because I think there's a lot in here that could really help the different listeners to be able to do a lot better with their own content marketing. So let's start off with the first piece, and writing something that's very popular. What are some of the different things that you've done to really see that something is popular?
I start with what's already working. None of my most popular posts have started with a brilliant, ingenious idea that Aaron came up with. It's always been one thing led to another, and it's been proven in a small way, or even something like Google Trends, what's the most popular as far as like even celebrities or current pop culture topics go. That base has to start with something people already want. And that's something you go out and get quantitative research on. And it has to start there, because if you're trying to invent something, I mean, unless you're Steve Jobs, it's probably not going to go that well for you. So you start with what's already working, that's verifiable.
And let's go with a little bit of as you're going through this, your example, say with Unbounce, and as you were doing that project.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
So with Unbounce, so this was an article on presidential marketing. And what actually came out was I got 18 of sort of my dream list of conversion rate optimization experts to all contribute and tear down Hillary Clinton's entire funnel and Donald Trump's entire funnel online. And now that was maybe bordering on I'm a genius, that's such a good idea, but no, because all that originated with a friend of mine who said I wrote this really popular post on my site that did some behind the scenes A/B tests way back when it was still like an open Republican field, and Rubio was doing A/B tests on his site. He's like, I got this cool little post about the sort of behind the scenes A/B testing. It did really well on my site. We tried to turn that into an article for Smashing Magazine, made it all the way to the end of the editorial process, and then they killed my baby. I was very disappointed. Oh. Turned that around and gave it to, I think it was Simply Measured, were the people that eventually ran with it, and then saw the success there and figured, man, I can double down on this. We can do this with the two current ones because this has already proven itself. It's obviously a popular topic. I mean, that's a popular search topic. That's a popular social topic. That's a popular Facebook topic. Absolutely. And so let's just merge. We know this is a popular topic. Now let's get real experts and niche down on it and bring those two together. And it's beautiful. I probably shouldn't say this out loud. I'll get really practical about how, so I have 4 of the top 5 posts right now for one of my current clients, which is GetResponse. And they churn out a bunch of stuff on their blog, sometimes multiple posts a day. I have 4 of the top 5 according to BuzzSumo. I should not say this, but I'm going to. The way I got the inspiration for most of those articles was I used BuzzSumo to search MailChimp, and then just wrote better articles on those same topics that were popular on MailChimp. I don't know how I not into have, but that's that's it.
Yeah, no, and that's actually one of the ways that I've found a lot of success for a lot of the things that I've done. It's
Yeah.
in a sense, it's kind of like taking the framework for startups, in that you've got something that's already proven, and then you start growing it. The same thing you can do with your content. You find something that's proven, and then you continue growing it.
Yeah. And then you repurpose like a madman. Right? Like that's the other thing. If you're writing one article and you're done and moving on to the next thing, you are killing yourself. That one I wrote for Client Boots, that was something like 5,000 words. That turned into a guest post on Copyblogger. It turned into one of the Get Response articles that was so popular. It turned into another post on Unbounce. Like it just rolls because you do all this content and you just slightly repurpose and boom. I mean, works. It's that 80-20 if that's the theme here, right? It's like, okay, I put my energy into this thing. I'm gonna get all I can out of it.
Oh, that's great. So then let's go now to after you found that popular topic to write about for Unbounce, it was that presidential marketing campaign. What then is the next step?
The next step is what's the heaven and what's the hell? And I will rarely use those terms in the post itself. I talk about this when I'm talking about big picture behind the scene things, but every one of these popular posts is there's a hell that exists in the reader's world, right? Just a lack of, like for optimization, right? The real hell is not so much how do I gain statistical significance, but the real thing people are struggling with is what should I start testing, right? And two, what do I do if I don't have enough traffic? Because that's like murder to anybody who really wants to optimize is these two, like what do I prioritize to test and what do I do if I don't have enough traffic? And so what are like the best practice principles that can save me from like, I love reading about this stuff. It's neat to see these case studies, but just give me and so what this presidential optimization one was like, here is like the highest stakes funnel in US history. Right? These people have insane teams behind the scenes. Kyle Rush is a optimization genius, and he's the deputy CTO at Hillary's camp. Genius. And he's writing these little tiny posts on Medium about like, here's how we reduce like the number of clicks in this thing, which give us a 200% increase in saved credit cards, which then led into higher donation, which is, and they're just sort of out there. They're not really like getting all that much attention that they deserve. And so the heaven of that was like, we're going to take what are obvious lessons from these incredibly high stakes funnels, and here's what you can do for your own site. And we're just going to boil it down for you. We're going to save you from these two hells. We're going to deliver you unto this heaven. If you're going to walk away knowing exactly, tried and true, here's what I need to do next. That's like the powerful like mindset that I want to put myself in is what's the hell the person's going through? How can I deliver them unto that heaven? And that means it has to be practical.
So as you're doing this, how did you do the different research to find out some of those different things of what is the hell that you want to save the reader from and what is the hell or heaven, excuse me, that you want to deliver them to?
Yeah. The best place to find this is review mining. And so this would be a little bit of a tangent from blog posts. Like when I write landing pages or sales pages, it is not an exercise in creativity. It is not. Great sales pages, great landing pages are an exercise in competitive analysis. What are the people that you're competing against doing and doing well? And two, what are the real customers saying? That is like today, I'm finishing up a landing page. I've spent the last 2-3 weeks on research. And then now it's just butter. It's just like, because I've got direct phrases from Amazon reviews, from Yelp reviews, from blog comments on these other people's sites about what they love and what they hate about it. What were the sticking points? Like that's the gold. And I just do all that research to pull it out, right? And especially review mining, I put that all into some giant, I've got these Google spreadsheets that just look ridiculous and Beautiful Mind-esque. Like they just look insane. And then I'm boiling all that down into keywords. I'm looking at like the structure of other people's landing pages that I know are doing it really well. Do they open with pain? Do they open with pleasure? How are they dropping in customer testimonials? What are the best lines from those customer testimonials that I can take the exact language out of, like borderline plagiarism, and see that into my own copy? It's not an exercise in creativity. That heaven and hell is what are people out there actually saying?
That's great. And then so let me dig a little bit into the review process. I know that is a very critical piece, especially if you are doing a landing page, but even if you're not, even if you're just writing different articles,
yeah.
Tell us how do you are you just reading through all those different reviews, or do you have somebody else who's doing that? What are you looking for? Do you eliminate some of those different reviews? What are you doing?
So I work right now with this just a fantastic research assistant, and that's one of the best things I've invested money in, is paying, and it's somebody I built a relationship with, and she's fantastic. She's all into like landing page optimization as well. And so I set up the framework. I identify what are the top competitors. Here's what you need to do is find all of their ads, and I've got a few different like keyword spy tools and AdWord spy tools that I use, and I kind of give them there. I'm like, for this particular topic, it's going to be a lot better to go to Angie's List, Yelp, and Google reviews versus like products. That not like, those are services. Products, like I want you to go to Amazon. I want you to go like there's B2B reviews. App Radius is fantastic. So I create that structure and framework. I build out those spreadsheets. Here's all the language I want you to get from the ads. Here's all the language I want to get you from the landing pages, which really important there is, okay, every landing page, find out what the testimonials are and the CTAs. That's what I want you to research. And then I identify the low-hanging fruit for the different review sites based on, is it service, is it product, that kind of thing. Is it local, is it not? And I'm just asking them to basically do a big dump. Like they're just copy and pasting, copy and pasting, copy and pasting. And you can do the same thing yourself. And then once you've got that all in this really clear black and white, there's no images in there. I'm just spending like 3 days staring at it, kind of thing. And then I get to know that. I get to know that language and what the hot buttons are and what those heaven and hells are. And then it just comes out when that research is done. It just comes out and it's fun.
Oh, that's awesome. So as you've going back to the different articles, and you've gotten a lot of great results for all these different people. What was it that helped you to get those different results, and how would you try replicating, if somebody wants to try replicating that success, what are some of those key components?
You kind of hear this like theme going of, it's not about creativity, it's not about invention, it's about finding out what's already working. And that's honestly the cornerstone. Is to find amazing people that are doing amazing things that are already popular, and at the very least start sort of hodgepodging, putting that together for yourself. That's probably the easiest way to actually replicate, is to not invent. The only other piece I would mention is there is such a slight difference that ends up, it's like that last 5%. Or like my dad. My dad is a near world-class athlete, triathlon guy. He's still insanely in better shape than I am. Like, I'm just going to have to wait for my dad to get old. I'm never going to get stronger than him. That's just the reality of my life. And one day he told me this story about, he lives out in Colorado. He's biking downhill, and all of a sudden this pack of like legit pros just comes screaming by him. And if you've ever gone like over 30 miles per hour on a bicycle, it's like the speed wobbles come in. It's insane. And so he's going down what he feels like is maxing out his potential. And anybody who looks at him on the street would be like, that guy is top notch. How can anybody compete with him? And then here come this pack professionals, and he's all locked in, and they're just taking off their jackets and putting them away. Like, hands off the bike, blow past him. There's this little difference that a lot of people outside can't tell. And those little differences come into things like asking and answering questions throughout your piece, and creating clear structures, adding flippant examples to things so people can see it in real life, double checking your numbers and your stats, going the extra mile when you do find a really good illustration, of just reaching out to that person and asking for a little tidbit extra directly from them for that article. These are those little ingredients that add up huge. And people won't be able to put their finger on it. They won't be able to tell you why, my dad is all locked in and the other person is taking off their jacket like it's not a thing. But it's those tiny little ingredients that make that from really, really good to world class.
No, that's great. Are there other different things that you feel that is kind of the 20% that a marketer should really focus on in order to get those 80% of those results? Are there any other pieces you feel that are necessary?
don't try to overcome your weaknesses. That sounds like a weird thing, but like, I know I am not the data and analytics guy. I spoke at Unbounce earlier this year, and at the last minute I decided, you know what, that's not me. I'm going to take out all of the like data wins that I've had and just be honest about, like, I basically shared with you a lot of shallow metrics, page views and share count, right? Like, but that's like what I know, so I can share about that honestly. I was so glad I did that, because I ended up sitting next to Michael Agard, who's like the CRO expert at Unbounce, and he just like decimated anybody who had like data in their presentation. And when I was sitting there, and I was like, I was so happy that I didn't try to overcome my weaknesses. I just played to my strengths. And that's a really good 80-20 principle, is don't spend your time trying to figure out how I can be somebody I'm not. If you're a good storyteller, roll with it. If you're the data person, then like, so let someone else be the storyteller. You kill it on data, and that's how you win. That you play to those strengths and build on them instead of trying to overcome the weaknesses.
Oh, that's great. And what are some of the different tools that you use to be proficient in getting all of this traffic getting published on these different sites? What are some of the things that really have helped you? And the reason I put this near the end is because, you know, tools are supposed to help you accomplish what you've already done. You know, if people don't see, you know, it's not just like, okay, I do this tool and all of a sudden you get some magic results, but there are still some different things that help you along the way. Tell us a little bit about that, Aaron.
So Andy Crestodina had a great line at CM World this year. And I saw somebody retweet it recently, which is why it's on the front of my mind, that it's not the best content that wins, it's the best promoted content. And so that's that, like, I know that I'm going to sound like a noob because I'm talking to a guy that, like, the stuff you do, I still constantly learn from, like, the LinkedIn stuff. I'm like, I gotta do that. I gotta do that. But he's absolutely right. And content promotion starts by not going it alone. This is the real power. And even the roundup posts are kind of getting to a place where, I mean, we, you know, talk about like the lame questions you get that everybody's already been asked, like, what are the mistakes new bloggers make? It's like, okay, that's out there. Got to come up with the original question. But if you go with the original angle, just making collaboration part and parcel of your creation process itself. And then it's so much more natural to leverage all the people that you've either mentioned or linked to or have contributed to it, and they're down to promote. You know, and it also makes it so these weird, isolated internet people like you and I actually have human relationships. It's kind of like a nice byproduct, right? So go into the creation process together. And then as far as tools go, you're insane if you're not in as many Slack groups as you can possibly be in at this point. That means big borrowing and like banging on the doors of people being like, just ask them, right? Are you in any Slack groups right now? I'd love to be a part. Or just ask them, are you in any, right? One question at a time. And then when they answer, then you go into like, love to be a part. Yeah, because Slack groups, there's a bunch of open ones. Inbound's got one. CM World's got one. There's a lot of open Slack groups you can just do Google searches for. And as long as you're a cool person there, people will share your stuff. And then there's closed groups that are just like money when it comes to we're all in this together to share. So that's collaboration again. Really super practical. My secret weapon is Q Promote. I love Q Promote. And I put basically everything I write into that. And what they do is instead of something like co-promote that kind of does these weird random retweets of things, if you've tried some of these, like how do I sort of soup up my social media without paying a lot of money for it? What Q-Promote does is they've got basically hand curators behind the scenes who approve every post, and then they send it out based on the topic that it's most appropriate to actual real humans who actually really tweet it for you through Buffer. And that has been like a game changer for me. I love these guys to death. And it's not insanely expensive. It's not like an AdWords campaign or a promote on Twitter. I think it's like $30 for, I want to say 90 days, and they'll put it in their queue for you. And it is unbelievably awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of Q Promote. I think I might have even told you about connecting with them. And
you were the one. Yeah, see, that's right. Yeah, I am a noob still. I'm just rolling off your coattails.
Well, I mean, it goes both ways, Aaron. You know, there's a lot of things that I've likewise have learned from you, and I think that's one of the beautiful things is when you start connecting with different influencers, is then you also begin to learn from them as well.
Yeah, and it's neat stuff too, because it's like you just start out with the people that are around you.
Oh, that's very true. Yeah, and then a couple other tools you'd mentioned about BuzzSumo and Google Trends and helping you find popular content. Are there other tools that you also use to do that, or are those the main two tools that you use?
That's it. Those are the main two tools. That's how I find popular topics, because I'm not an SEO guy. I can just figure out what's popular.
Awesome. And then one last final question. This is kind of a fun one I like to end on. Aaron, what is something that you believe true related to content marketing you think most do not?
What do I believe is true that most do not? I think this has to do with repurposing. I am so nowhere near the big of a deal as I am in my head. And neither is anybody else, unless maybe you're like Gary Vee. But even Gary Vee, like the vast majority of humans in the universe, have never heard of him. And so, like for instance, I'm helping a client right now with a keynote presentation, right? And what we basically did is I goat roast some articles that went up to really big places, and so we're hodgepodging these together for this keynote. And this person's concern is like, well, aren't people just going to say, hey, I already read this, why are you telling me this again? And it's that, no, like 1% of your audience maybe has heard of you, let alone like read these pieces. So use it. Like, you don't need to reinvent every time. Don't plagiarize yourself. Don't try to get paid twice for the same job. But there's just, you don't need to be that original every time. As long as you're using something like CopyScrape, another great tool to make sure you're not plagiarizing yourself for anybody else, as long as the words are in a new order and just original prose, use it over and over again, because yeah, you're not as big a deal as you think you are. Nobody's read what you wrote. Even if it like blew up, nobody's really read it.
Oh, that's great. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for all the great information that you shared with us today. For those who are interested in wanting to learn more, Aaron's got actually this guest blogging course that he has put together. Right off the bat, it's free at the moment, but sounds like it later will turn into a paid course. If you want to check it out, go to iconicontent.com/guest-posting-course. And we'll put that into the YouTube notes and everywhere else that I end up republishing it.
Yeah.
But Aaron, tell us a little bit, if somebody wants to connect more with you, what is the best way for them to do so?
Oh man, this is such a good question. The best way to do so is send me an email. My email is on my website. Like, don't worry about LinkedIn, Twitter, trying to like hook. My email is on my website. Go find it. Show me that you're that interested, and be insanely specific. Go to my website. If you actually want to connect with me, if you want to get featured in a post, and if you just say, hey, I got this great thing, here's the data, here's the quote I'd like you to include, it fit good in this publication, the more specific you can be heavy-handed with me. Do not send me a vague, open-ended like email about, that's an assignment for me. Just be specific about what I can do for you. If you got a question, tell me the question. Tell me how many words you want from me. And if it fits, I'm down. Just be specific.
Be specific and brief. Yep, that's been the magic that I've always found to work. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Really appreciate you being with us here today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.